All right, here we go. All right, everybody.
Awesome.
My name is Russ Hamilton, and I'm here with Shane Warnke, and we are going to talk about corrections and the particular YouTube channel that I'm now on is Correctional Professionals. I'm doing this particular channel in order to try and be able to address some things away from some of the other potential political pitfalls, if you will, and I will just leave it at that. My guest tonight is Shane Warnke Jr. And anyway, one of the things that we're going to really be discussing tonight is what's going on in Minnesota. And much like California, Minnesota has some bad things that are going on that are being fostered by what I think is a political event that's very anti corrections. When I say anti corrections, I mean against good sound correctional policy with evidence based practices. And we're going to get into that a bit more. But now I'd like to just turn to my guest here. Shane, just give me kind of the 30,000-foot overview there about you and yourself and your experience with corrections.
Absolutely, Russ. First and foremost, thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate the work that you do. My career started in 2005, and I just kind of like anyone else coming into the field, there's a lot to learn, and it's you're not only learning the culture within your rank and file, but you're also trying to learn the culture within the incarcerated community. So it's very daunting at times, I guess you could say. As I progressed in my career, I, started going to school, and I'm actually finishing up my PhD this year. So that's really helped. Working in the field up until the time I retired has really helped kind of mold that kind of perspective. Overview with the things that are going on in Minnesota. I don't know how far you want me to jump into this right now, Russ, but we are the state of corrections in Minnesota it's in an erosion state right now. We've got natural born male inmates that are getting sent to female prison. We have sex change procedures and breast enhancements, vocal lessons, feminizing vocal lessons that are all being offered at the taxpayer's dime. And I think furthermore and most troubling is they're closing the Stillwater prison, which is the prison that I worked at for the majority of my career. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So, it's it's just kind of odd and interesting. This coming week sometime, I have authored an article that will be appearing in my Substack, which is Dangerous on Substack. If anyone cares to check that out, I do have a few hundred subscribers right now. But one of the things that I address is the fact of the state of safety inside corrections. And safety always has to be number one. And, for those that don't really know me, I will say this about safety in corrections. I have saved many an inmate from many an assault, including armed assaults. And I think that overall, the way that corrections functions out there, most correctional officers, we're very proud of that fact that we actually go in there and we stop these assaults and rapes and riots and things like that. And the public kind of has a jaundiced view of what it is that we do. And I'm kind of like on one side, if I were going to describe myself politically, and very leaning kind of libertarian. I don't care what people more or less do in their private lives, but what I do care about is when we take that and we do something so absurd as to try and put a sheep inside a pen of wolves, or we try and take a wolf and put it inside a pen of sheep. And that's kind of what I see happening in Minnesota. Now, I'm a little bit further away than you are, but I can speak to some of the things that have happened here in California with regards to pregnancies and assaults and rapes and attempted escape attempts, because we're taking these individuals out and we're putting them into a position where they're more likely to be able to escape. Just down the road from here, there was an inmate being taken out for what was essentially an elective cosmetic procedure. I'll just put it that way. And that escape attempt only happened because that individual was on the outside and was in the midst of transition and being put into a position where they could leverage that. So this is a serious thing. It's not a laughing matter, and it's not something to be taken lightly. I've seen things in Minnesota though that really give me pause. I saw it was a female, I want to say she was an assemblywoman, talking about the Minnesota packing devices. Do you know what I'm talking about with regards to that? And
Yeah, yeah, I do, I do. And if you don't mind, so I equate it to this. When I was doing corrections, if you found a contraband sexual device, that offender was going to segregation and they were going to face discipline charges, right? Contraband. We went from that ideology, which, like you said before, Russ, is how you maintain the security of a facility. You run a tight ship, as tight as you can. We went from that to them being able to order that out of the commissary magazines. So it's went so far the other way here. It's just unbelievable where they can, men in men's facilities can order bras and get, breast jobs done, and really creating a more of a danger, because you're putting this, like you said, putting a sheep into a pack of wolves that are, many of whom have committed these crimes of, sexual crimes. And that's just power for the course for them, putting staff at danger even more.
yeah, I think that some of these things we've just gone so far to leaning in one direction. Back in the 90s, we had PREA come on the books, and so PREA was the Prison Rape Elimination Act. Um, Make no mistake about it, I am all for eliminating, rape and sexual misconduct of any kind in our prisons. I think that that's part of just where good, solid foundations come from when we're talking about people's civil rights. Like it or not, we don't get to choose who we protect and who we don't protect. So when I see these kinds of things developing, it really kind of takes me aback. The first thing that I said with regards to PREA was the fact that I thought it was a end around by the federal government um, to try and do away with the 10th Amendment. Because the 10th Amendment gives a lot more power actually to the states than it does to the federal ones. Basically, it says that anything that's not enumerated is a right retained by the states or the people. And so I thought that was just a way for them to kind of shoehorn in on things. And then they took it so far as, just to give an example, to do things that seem entirely even outside the scope of PREA, like forcing female officers to announce themselves. When you have a female officer who's forced to announce herself, and tell me if I'm wrong here, see if this is your similar experience. It does two things. It puts inmates in a position to know that she's on her way into the housing unit, and that puts them in a position to possibly do something bad or rank or obscene to her. And the second thing it does, it stops them from committing whatever crimes that they're in the process of, including sexual crimes, and makes it that much harder for us to police things. So has that been your experience? And tell me what you think about PREA.
Yeah, I remember when PREA got implemented. I was kind of first to your point, Russ. We actually went as far as to put doorbells in the living units that you had to sound and hit a button, like ding dong. So you're like announcing a female in the unit with an audible doorbell, essentially. I'm with you. I'm all about civil rights, and I don't think everybody who's incarcerated should be protected to the nth degree, from being victimized, sexually assaulted, so on and so forth. I remember when it got implemented into my facility, I was actually part of a group of people that every single inmate had to go through kind of a PREA orientation, even the people that were already there, and where we showed video, like a video. And these guys, I mean, watching this video was very cheesy and hokey. Obviously had a theme behind it, but it was like they were like watching a comedy show. They were all laughing, and laughing in a nervous way because they know as well as we do that that stuff takes place. I mean, it's yeah, it is a real problem. You know, back to the kind of the woke trans thing going on. I mean, it just heightens that. It just makes it more intense and um, more inclined for problematic things to happen.
Yeah, I'll say that that's definitely one element of things that do badly impact, believe it or not, the inmate part of the equation, but then staff
Right.
as well. And then worst of all that we know is when it starts to impact public safety. Not always the case, but there is the potential for that. So when we start getting into some of these things that have happened across the country, and now particularly talking about Stillwater, tell me what's going on at Stillwater with regards to the fact that A, I know they're shutting it down. B, I know that probably fewer intakes are maybe happening statewide. I can understand some of the justifications with regards to the plants, becoming dilapidated and older and so forth. But tell me what's
Right.
going on with regards to classification. If you people aren't familiar out there, classification is really important. If we start, just saying genuflecting over someone, say, hey, now you're a good bad guy instead of a bad guy. What has been going on with regards to that at Stillwater and Minnesota as a whole?
Well, I think first and foremost, Russ, I mean, this whole decision to close Stillwater, I'm gonna first touch on your point. The way the media portrayed the alleged dilapidation of the facility is not true. What is true is the facility is 111 years old. We know that, right? But outside of that, I mean, they've been dumping money into it for years, keeping it up and running. There's a couple things that could be done. That thing would stand for another 100 years. So the whole narrative of the degree of dilapidation is completely false. They're painting it. Ultimately, this commissioner of corrections isn't going to stop at Stillwater. That's where it's going to start. Now, the problem with this whole thing is number one, it was done in a backroom deal. It literally got brought to the Senate floor, was part of the bill, and pretty much everybody was blindsided. They didn't include any pertinent, all pertinent stakeholders in this decision-making process. Second, they didn't have a plan. What their plan is, or what they're doing, they're chasing their tails, is they are lessening or eliminating discipline records to lower point scores, custody level point scores, to be able to rationalize and justify moving these guys to like way lower custody level facilities. Now, case in point, the staff at these facilities where these individuals that are being moved to, they're not trained collectively to deal with that level, because that's not the level the facility is. So they're going about it in a very raw, behind the scenes, crooked kind of way.
Well, let me ask you this. My experience and from what I've seen here in California, I'm not, I don't have, any great insights as to, necessarily what's going on nationwide.
Right.
But what they used to do here is they would just do what they would call an override. And the override would allow them to, just like basically jump down one classification section. Here it's, 1 through 4. I don't know if it's similar there or not.
One through five here.
1 through 5.
Yeah.
So here, the other thing that they can do is they can just kind of overlook some things. They can overlook disciplinaries. They can overlook crimes, and they can just not focus as much on what's going on with an individual with regards to his STGs and everything else, if there's some type of agenda in play. So do you see an agenda in play there in Minnesota, or what do you think the root causes of it are? Oh, I think I'll put it on pause. I lost him. So what do you think the agenda, if there is one, what is the agenda of what's going on inside of Minnesota specifically?
I think they're trying to close as many facilities down. Here's my prediction. Obviously, we know Stillwater. They've announced that's getting closed down. My prediction is they're going to close St. Cloud next, which is actually older than Stillwater, and they're going to try to get as many people out of prisons as they can.
And including getting them out of prisons just means they're going to be either paroled or put on probation to keep them out there in the community. Oops, we got your hold on. Your mic is muted. Your mic is muted. I don't think you can hear me.
What the heck? It keeps kicking me off.
There
Can
you
you hear
go.
me?
There you go. Now I can hear you again. You're good.
You there?
Yep.
I don't know. It keeps kicking me off or kicking my sound out. I'm sorry. Let's try that again. I don't know what happened. I've never had this issue before. Did you pause it again or no?
No, we're good. We're good. Good. We'll just keep it live.
All right. Yeah. Sorry. Technical difficulties. I think their ultimate plan is to try to get as many people out of prison as they can. And I think they're going to keep closing down facilities. I know they just announced a week or two ago that they had found issues with the water at another facility, which Lionel Lakes it's a huge treatment facility. So how that looks long term, I have no idea. Obviously, water is a huge thing. So I guess time will tell on that.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you that here in California, we have a lot of people that don't belong on the street. And crime is as rampant as anything that I've ever seen. I live in a nice little community here, less than 3,000 people. And even though ours is small and we're not edges of it, and we still have problems with lots of methamphetamine, homelessness, not rampant, but you can go into town any given day of the week and see 4 or 5 people.
It's funny too.
Not my experience.
They talk about evidence-based practices, right? And to me, and you might agree or you might disagree, but that means to me that means looking at what works, right? And then modeling your protocol, your system, your procedures after that. So now you mentioned kind of what California looks like as far as community stuff and community corrections. And I mean, we're going to follow that here in Minnesota. It's inevitable.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I don't know, I kind of like see between your governor and my governor, I see a race to the bottom. And I think that that's really sad because it's going to be paid for by the public, whatever that looks like, by the failure to have adequate policing, adequate places to keep people who are predators, and then just by not really giving any real impetus to actually doing some reentry and rehabilitation work, which is part of corrections. As much as some of us in the field may not like that, there is a place for it. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that it's effective or cost effective or anything like that, but I'm saying there's an element of it that we can use to make things a little tiny bit better. And if we do a lot of different things that make things a little tiny bit better, we can make corrections overall much better. But we're not headed in that direction at all. We're headed in the exact wrong direction.
Looking at the kind of the street level public safety situation here in Minnesota, we've got a county prosecutor in the county where the death of George Floyd happened, and she absolutely will roast a cop anytime she has a chance. She tried to roast and prosecute a cop to the point where she knew she was wrong, so they contracted a law firm from DC. It ended up getting tossed. They dropped it, but like you and me know that an automobile is it's a deadly weapon when used the wrong way. And this, I'm not going to dive into this too deep, but this basically his partner started getting drugged down the freeway. The guy took off when he was, halfway in the window, and he ended up having to take this man's life. And I think it's eroding our law enforcement community here, because in law enforcement and effective policing, seconds count. And if these cops have to question whether or not that, they're put in that deadly force situation, and they have to second guess that just because we've seen what has happened here in Minnesota. I mean, there's no sanctity and there's no support for our public safety. I mean, really all the way around.
Yeah. And I think that's, really unfortunately, what we've gotten to. So if I were to tell you or ask you to say something with regards to the public out there and how this is going to affect them in Minnesota specifically, what would your warning sound like to them out there?
I mean, you folks need to think about who you're voting for the next time you go to the ballot. You go to the ballot to cast your votes, because, I mean, Governor Tim Walz has taken this state from an $18 billion surplus to a $24 billion deficit. That right there alone should be enough. How do and he hasn't announced if he's going to run again, but if he does, I mean, Russ, if you owned a business and you had that kind of a loss, do you think you'd be in business still?
No. I mean, and that's what we see all over the place, though. Everything is about, pandering to, the lowest tiers of society that are out there doing crimes and everything else. And then everyone else is just forced to pay for it. Right. And then if you don't like it, or if you make noise about it, then they tend to find a way to punish you. Right. So anyway, this is something that's not going to change overnight. And yet I think that programs like this, where we get to, educate the public a little bit. I hope some of the public is going to see this, or some of our fellow brothers and sisters in correctional law enforcement specifically, bother to tell the public, hey, watch these guys. They're going to tell you what it's really all about. Because I think too many people get the idea that we're just a bunch of knuckle draggers out there. And while there is an element where that's sometimes called for, it's the exception, not the rule. And yet we are the ones that deal with the worst of the worst of the worst. And so if we're out there telling you that things are really bad and things are badly impacting public safety, you should listen to us. And kind of the point of this program as we progress is going to be people like you, people like me, actually bringing solutions to the table. It's really easy, to get on some of these programs, and you've probably seen some of them, where all people do is complain about what's going on. And there is a place and a time for that, and accountability should be very real. But you know what? I had this great supervisor, and maybe I should say his name, maybe I shouldn't, Craig Koenig. But anyway,
that was quick, Russ.
I'll give him up in a heartbeat, But sometimes I wouldn't say sometimes. Every time he would tell me, don't bring me your problems, bring me your solutions. And so that was actually something that stuck with me over the years. And so that's what I've tried to do in my corrections career, is to try and bring solutions. And so that's what I've done, with Tier Talk, what I'm going to try and do with this program here, what I've got coming up this week. I'm not letting it all out of the bag right now, but I do have some significant announcements that are going to be happening, and people are going to be seeing more of things like this on this channel, and just really kind of going after some of the political consequences of bad things that are happening in corrections. So do you have anything else to add before we take flight here?
No, I think it's about all I got. I mean, I think folks need to really look at the bigger picture. Um, as American taxpayers, you should really be questioning where your money is going on the local level. Obviously, we're getting better in some ways on the federal level. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, the local scene, especially here in Minnesota, you folks got to really start asking where's this money going. And quite honestly, we've highlighted that a little bit. I mean, as far as Minnesota, I mean, you got people getting non-essential elective surgeries on the taxpayer's dime. That there should be no reason for that ever. As they're doing that here in Minnesota, they're closing down a facility too. None of it makes sense. So you're going to close a facility, put people at risk, and then pay for these elective surgeries. $500,000, Russ, alone this last year just for transportation costs. That's insane.
That is, that really brings it all home. I think that somebody is making a profit out there, and it's probably structured in some way that has to do with an agenda. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Exactly. But we all know that's probably the case.
Right.
Anyway, this is going to conclude the very first one of these that I've done on really, with a guest here on my little CPC broadcast, and it's been great to see you and kind of meet you like this. We've talked back and forth a bit over the past 2 or 3 years.
Yes, sir.
So anyway, it's great to kind of put a little bit more to that. You will be on again at some point very soon.
Thank you, sir.
And we're also going to end up discussing a little bit more of some other people that we might have on from Minnesota in the near future, because I would like to help the Minnesota Department of Corrections. I would like to help my fellow brothers and sisters, behind the badge up there, and see what we can do by, getting some people to get off their duff and promote and be able to, reach out and make a real difference. And I think that's really where the action is at. So anyway, good night, people, and it's been good. And I hope somebody learned something out there. Bringing it to an end now.